Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Advanced Grammar from the Islamic University of Gaza. This is Rafat Lara here. We continue our online grammar sessions. This is one of the most interesting topics. We already discussed conjunctives or connectors when we spoke about sentence structure, how to make compound, how to make complex sentences. But in Unit 19, this is presented in a different way, regardless of the sentence type. Connectives that express cause and effect, contrast, and condition. Again, I'm basically using most of the information from BT Azar's Understanding and Using English Grammar, and I'm starting with these error analysis sentences. You can try to pause the video and take some time to fix these sentences. Each sentence here has an error related to connectives, how sentences are connected, etc. Pause the video and try to answer them. For example, look at this sentence. A clinic received complaints about its care. Is the subject here, clinic, and the verb is received, and then this is object and prepositional phrase. And then we have a comma, and then we have another subject and verb. So these are two main clauses connected with a verb. We said this is wrong. This is one of the worst grammar errors you could commit. We don't connect with a comma. The comma cannot connect, doesn't connect. So you could add either a fanboys, so it began. You could remove the comma, use full stop, start with a capital, or you could remove the comma and add a semicolon. The semicolon is a connector, makes a compound sentence. Or you keep the comma, but you begin this whole thing, the first clause, with a subordinator. For example, because the clinic received complaints about its care, it began sending out surveys to its patients. There are dozens of ways to fix a single sentence. Again, so this, you have more sentences here you can look at and see how they can be fixed. Okay. Now, when we talk about connectors, they can be many things, like I said. They can be subordinators or coordinators, or they can be transition signals. Because Julian felt sick, he left work early. So this is the subordinate clause, and this is the main clause here. Look, if we start with a subordinator, there is a comma, but the comma is almost always optional. So if you take out the comma, it's okay, but there should be a comma. In academic writing, it's better to use a comma. It's easier because it gives a pause for the reader, for the listener to follow the thought smoothly. Even though Julian is afraid of doctors, this is yet another subordinate clause, dependent clause, because we have the subordinator even though. Look at the comma here, optional again. He decided to make an appointment. Now, these are two sentences. Julian had a rash and a fever, full stop. Consequently, the doctor ran tests. These are basically two sentences, not one sentence. If you want to make this one sentence, you remove the full stop and you add a semicolon and then a small letter. Remember, if this is comma, semicolon, this is wrong, because remember, you can't connect with a comma and consequently, however, furthermore, in addition, additionally, on the other hand, and these transition words are not connectors. They can be in complex, simple, and compound sentences. So this way, this sentence is compound because of the semicolon. If you remove consequently, the sentence is still correct. Now, after consequently and these transitions, we have again another optional comma. You should use it in academic writing, but it is optional. The doctor ran tests. However, she found nothing serious. Again, these are two simple sentences. If you want to make them compound, you remove the full stop, add a semicolon, not a comma. This is a common mistake. Students would say, the doctor ran tests, comma, however, comma, she found nothing serious. This is wrong because the comma doesn't connect, it's not a connector, and however is not a connector. It's not a subordinator, it's not a coordinator, it's just a transition signal that can be in simple, compound, and complex sentences. So to make this correct, you can make it two simple sentences, full stop, capital H, or semicolon, small h. Again, the comma here after however is optional. Now look at this. Julian wasn't seriously ill, but his doctor told him to rest anyway. But is one of the fanboys. It makes a compound sentence. Yeah, this is the correct sentence. Notice that however means basically means but they can't be replaced without changing the punctuation mark. So if you remove but and say however, the sentence is incorrect, structurally speaking, despite the fact that but means basically however. So if you want to replace but with however, you need to change the punctuation marks here, semicolon or a full stop. Julian wasn't well, so his doctor told him to rest. Again, a compound sentence. So due, now look at due to here. Due to means because or because of. Because of, due to, owing to are prepositions that followed with a phrase. Due to his illness, it's like because of his illness, Julian missed several days of work. This is a simple sentence because this is prepositional. This is not a subordinator. It's wrong if you say due to he is ill. You say due to his illness, due to being ill, due to the fact that he is ill. You can use the clause with the fact that. He stayed home from work because of his illness. This is a common mistake. Students would be say because of he is ill. No, because he is ill or because of his illness. Now, this is the a table from your book again. If you look at the table carefully, again, cause and effect, contrast, and condition. So to talk about cause and effect, we use because, since, now, that, etc. And so that. So that is different from so in the fanboys. These are subordinators. These make complex sentences. Now, the transitions, therefore, and consequently, remember, these are not subordinators, they're not coordinators. If you use them in compound sentences, there should be a semicolon before them, or in the middle of the two sentences. The conjunctions from the fanboys, we use so. For preposition, we use because of and due to. To express contrast, we use though, even though, although, sometimes while. And as transitions, we use however, nevertheless, nonetheless, on the other hand. Remember, these are not subordinators, they are not coordinators. As conjunctions from the fanboys, compound sentences. So these make complex sentences, these make compound sentences if they are in the middle of the sentence with a comma before them, an optional comma. And these depend on the punctuation, like I showed you just now. If you say he studied hard, full stop, however he failed, this is simple. If you say he studied hard, semicolon, however he failed, this is compound. If you say he studied hard, comma, however he failed, this is wrong. Now, despite and in spite of, again, they express contrast, but they are prepositions. You say despite his illness, despite being ill. Now, again, the idea here is that the first here row, all these connectors or words or connectives basically mean the same. They mean the same. The same thing here. They basically mean the same. Same here. but the usage, the structure they produce is different. We have complex sentences here, compound sentences here, and here it depends on the punctuation marks. Okay, so because of and due to, again, we said these are prepositions followed with phrases. Because of the weather, because the weather was cold, we stayed home. But because of the cold weather, due to the cold weather, or due to the fact that the weather was cold. This is a beautiful expression many students use, but don't overuse it. We stayed home because of the cold weather. We stayed home due to the cold weather. We stayed home due to the fact that the weather was cold. Or we stayed home because the weather was cold. Don't forget that we use for in the same sense. For from the fanboys, compound sentences. You say we, and it's a beautiful structure. Not many students use it, so it's good to use. But again, don't overuse it. We stayed home. Look at this. We stayed home. I went home. I was home. For the weather, remember, weather is uncountable. The weather was cold. Beautiful sentence. This is a compound sentence. For means because, but here it comes in the middle of the sentence. It's wrong to say for the weather was cold, we stayed home. This is completely wrong. There's an exercise here. Choose all the correct sentences. 1 and 2. Pause the video and try to answer them. And this is another exercise. Complete the sentences with because or because of or due to. Again, basically due to and because of have the same meaning, followed with gerund or noun, phrase, no subject, no verb, or the fact that, and then a subject and verb. Because of has to be followed with subject and verb. Sometimes it can be reduced. That's something we discussed earlier. So pause the video, try to answer these questions. Now, cause and effect using therefore, consequently, and so. Again, I'm repeating myself here. So is one of the fanboys, can be in the middle of the sentence to create a compound sentence if we have a comma before it. Therefore and consequently are not connectors. They're not subordinators. They're not coordinators. So it depends on how you punctuate. Al failed the test because he didn't study. Or you could say the same sentence. You begin with a subordinator because Al didn't study. He failed the test. But when we begin with a subordinator, like because, there is an optional comma here. Look at this sentence. If you don't begin with a subordinator, if, when, before, after, while, etc., if they are in the middle, you shouldn't use a comma. But if you use a comma, it's okay. In spoken English, it's okay. But in academic writing, you're not supposed to use this. But doesn't mean it's wrong. Al didn't study, therefore he failed. This is again simple sentence plus a simple sentence. Remember, it's wrong to say comma, therefore, because the comma doesn't connect, therefore is not a subordinator or a coordinator. If you want to fix it, you say semicolon, therefore he failed the test. Same thing in C. Al didn't study, semicolon, small, consequently he failed the test. Al didn't study, therefore he failed the test. Now look at this beautiful thing I mentioned before. When you use therefore, for example, for instance, consequently, all these transition words, they have 3 positions in the sentence. In the middle of the middle of the 2 sentences, in between the 2 main clauses, that is before the subject, between the subject and the verb, at the end of the clause. So look at this. This is before the subject, between the subject and the verb, at the end of the clause. At the end of the clause, between the subject and the verb, before the subject. These are all, by the way, simple sentence, simple sentence, simple sentence, simple sentence, simple sentence, simple sentence. If you want to make these sentences compound, look at what I'm going to do here. Okay? All you need to do is change the full stop into a semicolon. In the three cases, you change the full stop and you add a semicolon. And these are now compound sentences. Now, look at this. You don't move the semicolon. The semicolon remains in the middle between the two clauses. Remember, there must be a subject and a verb before the semicolon and a subject and a verb after the semicolon. So look at this. So I know some students would, when they move therefore, or the, for example, or for instance, or on the other hand, or nonetheless, or regardless, or besides, or consequently, when they move these transitions, they take the semicolon along with them. This is wrong. You keep the semicolon, you just move the word here, the transition. And look at how beautiful it is. It's very common here in the middle. Sometimes we see it between the subject and verb. That's beautiful. Look at here, there is the optional comma. If it is between the subject and verb, there are two optional commas. If you remove one, you remove the other. And when it is at the end, there's an optional comma before it. And it's at the end of the sentence, it's a really, really rare structure. It's beautiful. Al didn't study, he failed the test, therefore. So don't overuse this. Or you can simply make it a compound sentence with one of the fanboys. Al didn't study, so he failed. Okay, so we have adverb clauses, complex. We have the prepositions that are followed with phrasal phrases. And we have the transitions, like therefore. And we have the conjunctions. We have the fanboys. This is fan boys here. And this is for fanboys, remember, in compound sentences. Here we have complex sentences. Because it was hot, look at the optional comma. Because it was hot, we went swimming. We went swimming because it was hot. There's no comma. Here, you should use the comma. Here, you shouldn't use the comma. In both cases, if you use or don't use the comma, it's not wrong. Preposition, because of the hot weather, comma, we went swimming. We went swimming, no comma, because of the hot weather. These are simple sentences, by the way, because there's one main clause in each. Transitions, it was hot, therefore we went swimming. The comma here is optional, by the way. You can't take it, but in academic writing, you should use it. We, therefore, went swimming. Again, the two commas are optional, but remember, you use them together or you take them out together. These are also two simple sentences. It was hot, we went swimming, comma, therefore, also optional comma. If you remove it, it's okay, it's fine, therefore. Now, this sentence is compound not because of the therefore, but because we have a semicolon here. It was hot, semicolon, therefore, optional comma, we went swimming. Remember, if this same sentence, you write it this way, you take out the semicolon and you add a comma, it's wrong because the comma doesn't connect and therefore isn't a subordinator or a coordinator. So I'm highlighting this as wrong. Conjunctions, fanboys to create compound sentences. It was hot. Optional comma again. We always add the comma before the fanboys, and it's optional. If you don't use them, it's okay. So we went swimming. Other ways of expressing cause and effect, such that and so that. Now look at the rule here. With the rule is, so we say such adjective noun that, so adjective or adverb, so adjective that. So the rule is such adjective noun that, if I want to write it here, maybe, I don't know, such, that's the rule, plus adjective, plus noun, and then optional that, and then a clause. This is one thing here. However, if you use so plus adjective plus that. So the thing is that we add a noun with such. Anyway, because the weather was nice, we went to the zoo. It was, look at this, it was such nice weather. Remember, we don't say such a nice weather because weather is uncountable. It was, you say, don't say a good news, you say good news. You don't say an information, you say information. It was such nice weather that we went to the zoo. It was such a nice day that we went to the zoo. With the adjective, with so, you use so adjective that. The weather was so nice that we went to the zoo. It was such good coffee that I had another cup. It was such a foggy day. Again, remember with such, adjective and then noun, adjective and then noun. But with so hot that. Look at this. If there is present here, after that we use present. If it is past, you use past. Could. So the coffee was so hot that I couldn't drink it. I am so hungry that. So adjective that. She speaks so fast. This is an adverb. So adverb that I can't. Because speaks is present, we use can't. If it is spoke, it should be I couldn't. She spoke so fast that I couldn't understand her. He walked, okay, we have this here. He walked so quickly that I couldn't keep up. She made so many mistakes that she failed the exam. He has so few friends that he is always. These are a little bit of exceptions, but interesting to use. She has so much money that she can buy whatever she wants. Now, I want to add uh, here it says that can be deleted, it's optional. It was such a good book, I couldn't buy it. Now, many students were like, oh my God, where is the connector here? Why is there no connector, no subordinator? This is a complex sentence again. It was such a good book, I couldn't put it down. No, there is that we deleted because it's option. Same here, I was so hungry that I didn't wait for dinner. Now, sometimes we use to adjective to. You say, the man was very old. The man couldn't walk. You say, the man, look at this, is or was, because it's in the past, was too old to walk, infinitive. It's beautiful. If you want to use so, you say, the man was so old, remember that, and then close that he couldn't walk. You could still use such in the sentence. Say he was such an old man that he couldn't walk. Look at how beautiful this is. The man was very old. The man couldn't walk. The man was too old to walk. Remember, with too old to, you have infinitive. You don't use negative because to here is in the negative sense. The car was too expensive for me to buy. If you want to specify for somebody, for a person, use for her, for him, for me. So you say the car was too expensive for me to buy. Too expensive to buy is general. Too expensive for Ali to buy, for Huda to buy, for me to buy. You say the car was so expensive I couldn't buy it. It was such an expensive car, I couldn't buy it. There's another exercise here. Complete using either so or such. So remember, it depends on the rule we have here. Don't forget the exceptions that I went through very quickly. It was an enjoyable party. Noun, adjective. So it was such an enjoyable party. The party was so enjoyable that no one wanted to leave. Expressing purpose using so that, again, so that can be one of the subordinators, different from so alone, despite the fact that that is optional. I turned off the TV in order to enable my roommate to study in peace and quiet. Peace and quiet. In order to means to. Something that in order to is redundant. You don't have to use three words if you can use one word. I turned off the TV so my roommate could study in peace. If you talk about purpose, so meaning so that. And again, this is a complex sentence, not a compound sentence. Don't confuse it with so, cause and effect, so from the fanboys compound sentences. I'm going to cash a check so that I can buy my textbook, meaning in order to. In order to. Now, showing contrast or unexpected result. Remember again, you can make the sentences complex by using though, even though, although, or sometimes the sentences can be compound, like but and yet. You remember, but means contrast, yet means contrast with an element of surprise. Or you can use transitions, depending on whether you use a full stop or a semicolon before them. You can make a compound sentence or a simple sentence. Or prepositions, where usually they create simple sentences unless you use a clause in, despite the fact that. So these are prepositions are always followed with phrases or that clauses. Like exactly, these are similar to due to and because of and owing to. But these are used like to mean because. Those ones, these ones, despite, in spite of, are prepositions to mean however, contrast. Even though it was cold, comma, optional, I went swimming. Could be I went swimming even though it was cold. Although it was cold, I went swimming. Remember, after go, we use gerund as an infinitive, as an activity. He went shopping. Though it was cold, I went swimming. It was cold, but I went swimming. It was cold, but I went swimming. I still went swimming. It was cold, yet I went swimming. It was cold, full stop, nevertheless, comma, I went swimming. Now this sentence, this is simple. In H is compound because of the semicolon. If you take out the semicolon and use a comma, it's wrong. This will be in your exam. It was cold, semicolon, nevertheless, small letter, and then an optional comma, I went swimming. It was cold, however, I went swimming. With however, if you replace the full stop with a semicolon, it becomes a compound sentence. I went swimming despite the cold weather, despite the weather being cold. I went swimming in spite of the cold weather. I went swimming despite the fact that the weather was cold. So to show contrast, again, other expressions, we use while. It's beautiful. While is really a little bit strange because it's used in the middle of the sentence and preceded with a comma, like the compound sentence. This is a special case with while. Mary is rich while John is poor. John is poor while Mary is rich. Mary is rich, but John is poor. John is poor, but Mary is rich. Mary is rich, remember, semicolon. However, John is poor. Now, this sentence, again, if you write it this way, no semicolon, only a comma, it's wrong, completely and utterly wrong. John, remember I said after the semicolon, we have a small letter, unless it is a proper noun or something that has to be capital, like the pronoun I. John is poor, semicolon, remember, the semicolon comes between the two clauses, in the middle. Even if you move, however, and for example, and on the other hand, and consequently, and nonetheless, and therefore, you don't move the semicolon. Mary is rich, however. Mary is rich. John, on the other hand, is poor. These are two optional commas. Remember, if you use two optional commas, you either keep them together or take them out together. John is poor. Mary, on the other hand, is rich. Expressing conditions, otherwise or else. If I don't eat breakfast, I get hungry. This is a condition. We talked on our last lecture about conditional sentences. You will be late if you don't hurry up. So when we begin with the subordinator, there's the optional comma here. If the subordinator is in the middle, there's no need for the comma. If you use it, still it's not wrong. You will get wet unless means if not. Unless you take your umbrella. If you don't take your umbrella. I always eat breakfast, otherwise I get hungry. These are two simple sentences. To make them simple, to make them compound, no full stop, semicolon, and then small letter. You would better hurry, otherwise you will be late. Again, simple plus simple. If you take the full stop, you add a comma, and then a small letter, this is wrong because the comma doesn't connect, otherwise it's not a connector. If you want to fix it still, there are two ways to fix this. There are many ways actually. No comma, semicolon, or full stop and capital like this one. Take your umbrella, otherwise you will get wet. I always eat breakfast, or I get hungry during class, or else. This is for warning also, otherwise. You'd better hurry, or you will be late, or else you will be late. There is an exercise here. Use however, so that if, while, therefore, and since. Make sure to punctuate properly. Pause the video and try to answer this interesting question. We're almost done. Again, this is our last exercise. I consider this to be the most important exercise. It's usually in the end of your unit, at the end of the chapter 19, where you're given like about 12 or 13 sentences, each with a grammatical error related to the issues we discussed. Find the errors and fix them. The hotel had a mistake on its website. The price was very low, so that many people wanted rooms. Remember what we say? We don't say very low, so that. Don't forget the expression. You can pause the video and try to answer these questions. Always pay attention to the subject and the verb and the connector and what the connector, how the connector has to be used. Due to medical care costs less. Remember, due to should be followed with a phrase. But here, there is a subject, medical care, there is costs, which is a verb, so this is wrong. You can either replace the connector or you turn the clause into a phrase. And also, finally, you can pause the video here and try to answer the questions given to you. Okay, I'll stop here. If you have any question, please do ask on Facebook or on Moodle. Thank you very much. Good luck and see you soon.